You know, they say family is life's greatest blessing, and I used to believe that with all my heart. But the truth is, sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. Hey, I'm Barbara Wilson, and for 34 years I truly believed that every sacrifice I made for my family would eventually be met with love and gratitude. I thought that one day all the quiet moments I gave, the weekends I gave up, the retirement savings I dipped into, that it would all come back around. I was wrong. Before we get into the thick of it, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. And if this story resonates with you even a little, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow's video is something really special. I saved it just for you. Now back to this story. The moment I realized the truth about my relationship with my son and his wife, it didn't come on a birthday they forgot, or after being asked to babysit yet again. No. It was when my daughter-in-law Jennifer looked me straight in the eye and said, "We think it's better if you skip Christmas this year. Thomas and Diana are hosting, and honestly, Barbara, you just don't fit in." Let that sink in for a second. After everything I had done, after all the sick nights spent holding my child, after draining my savings to help them buy that dream home, after silently paying their mortgage for 3 years, now I was being told I didn't belong at my own son's holiday dinner table, and that my friend was the moment something inside me snapped. Because if I wasn't family enough for Christmas, maybe I wasn't family enough to keep paying for the roof over their heads either. What happened next would change everything for them, and especially for me. I'm 62 years old now, and if you had asked me a few years ago what retirement would look like, I would have painted you a lovely picture tending to my garden Sunday dinners with grandkids, maybe finally taking that trip to the coast with some girlfriends. Instead, I found myself in a quiet house that felt too big and too empty, surrounded by memories that used to comfort me. But now, they felt like ghosts. My story started in Oak Ridge, Pennsylvania. Not a big place, just large enough to have its own hospital, but small enough that everyone still knew your business. I began working at St. Mary's Medical Center, straight out of nursing school. And that's where I met Robert, my late husband. He was a hospital administrator, and he had the kindest eyes I'd ever seen. We married young, bought a modest house on Maple Street, dreamed of a big family. Life, as it often does, had other plans. After years of trying, we were blessed with one child, Michael. And from the moment they placed him in my arms, I knew I would do anything for that boy. When he was 3, he was diagnosed with severe asthma. I cut my hours at the hospital to care for him full time. I spent so many nights just listening to him breathe, ready to rush to the ER at the first sign of distress. That kind of parenting, it bonds you. I thought we were unbreakable. Robert and I sacrificed to give Michael the best start in life. We drove old cars, cut back on luxuries, saved every penny for his education. When he got into computers, we scraped together money to buy him his first desktop. When he wanted to attend a summer coding camp, I picked up extra shifts. Robert didn't get to see him graduate college. He passed away from a heart attack when Michael was just 20. I was 44, a widow, with funeral bills and a half-paid mortgage. The life insurance barely covered anything. But I kept going for Michael. "Maybe you should sell the house, Mom," he said one night about a month after we buried his father. "It's too big for just you, and the money could help with my tuition." That one stung. This was our family home. It was all I had left of Robert. But I understood Michael was grieving too, just in a different way. So I told him gently, "This is our home, sweetheart. Your dad and I worked so hard for it. Besides, where would you stay during breaks?" He didn't push back. And I picked up even more shifts to cover his college costs. For the next 3 years, I worked 60-hour weeks, took the overnight shifts no one wanted. I was exhausted. But when Michael walked across that graduation stage with his computer science degree in hand, he hugged me and said, "I did it, Mom. I couldn't have done it without you." Back then, that meant the world to me. Michael stayed in Oak Ridge after college, landing a job at a local tech company. I was thrilled. I imagined Sunday dinners, grandbabies running around, someday our lives still intertwined. Then he met Jennifer Parker. She was stunning, I'll give her that. Ambitious, polished, from a wealthy family over in Westfield. Her dad owned car dealerships. Her mom ran elaborate charity galas. They came from a completely different world. Mom meet Jenny Michael said bringing her over for dinner one night. She's in marketing. She's amazing. She was polite, but cold. Glanced around our little living room with a look that I'd politely describe as restrained disdain. "Your home is quaint," she said. I smiled, ignoring the undertone. Robert and I bought it when we were just starting out. It's nothing fancy, but it's filled with love. She offered a tight smile. "Well, that's what matters, isn't it? Michael and I are looking at places in Lakeview Estates. Have you seen those? Lakeview was... Well, let's just say it was outside anything we could ever afford back in the day. The houses started in the millions." "That sounds lovely," I replied, trying to be supportive. 6 months later, they were engaged. I was happy for Michael, of course. But I'll admit, I was worried. Their worlds were just different. Still, I tried to be involved. Barbara Diana Parker said at our first wedding planning meeting, "We've booked the Westfield Country Club and hired the state's top planner. Don't worry about a thing." I felt sidelined. I offered to help with the rehearsal dinner. "Oh," Diana said, exchanging a look with Jennifer. "We already booked it at Le Chateau. Thomas knows the owner." Then Jennifer chimed in, patting my hand like I was a child. "Maybe you could help assemble the wedding favors." I swallowed my pride and nodded. After all, wasn't it a mother's job to support her child's happiness, even when it hurt? The wedding was extravagant. Ice sculptures, a band that once played for a minor celebrity, 7 bridesmaids in designer gowns. I wore my nicest dress, but I still felt completely out of place. Michael spent most of the evening with Jennifer's family. He stopped by my table once. "Are you having a good time, Mom?" "Of course, sweetheart," I lied. "Everything's beautiful." After the honeymoon, they began house hunting. And yes, it was Lakeview Estates. They invited me to see one of the homes, a 4-bedroom colonial with a gourmet kitchen and lake views. "Isn't it perfect, Mom?" Michael beamed. "It's beautiful," I said. "But are you sure it's within budget?" Jennifer jumped in. "My parents are helping with the down payment, and we've run the numbers. It's manageable." Turns out I was part of that manageable plan. I just didn't know it yet. About a month after Michael and Jennifer moved into their dream house, the phone rang one evening while I was folding laundry. It was Michael, and his voice sounded tight, like he was trying not to sound panicked. "Mom, I hate to ask this, but we're in a bit of a bind." I didn't hesitate. "How much do you need?" $5,000, he said, exhaling with relief. "Just to help us catch up property taxes, new furniture, and Jenny's car payment. It's just a little tight this month." I withdrew the money the next day. That $5,000 came from my condo fund, the modest little savings I'd been building for something smaller and easier to maintain once I retired. But Michael needed me. That was what mattered, and that one-time emergency. It became the first of many. Every few months there'd be another call, another unexpected expense. The AC system went out. Jenny's job is restructuring. She needs a certification course. We're refinishing the hardwood floors. Jenny doesn't like the current color. Each time I reached into my savings. Each time Michael promised just until we get back on our feet. And each time the thanks became shorter, the calls more rushed. Then came the biggest ask yet. Michael showed up at my house one evening, alone. We sat at the same kitchen table where I used to help him with homework. The same table where we'd grieved Robert, where we'd celebrated birthdays and planned the future. He looked down at his hands and said, "Mom, we're falling behind on the mortgage. 3 months behind." He explained the interest rate had gone up, Jenny's dad had taken some business hits, and they just couldn't cover the full payment. "What are you asking me, Michael? Could you help us with the mortgage, just until I get the promotion I'm up for, or until Jenny finds something better? We don't want to lose the house. Mom, it's our home, our home." That phrase echoed in my mind. He meant the house he'd bought with Jennifer, the one he wanted me to help pay for, the one I hadn't been welcome to host a holiday dinner in. Still, I said yes. I couldn't stand the thought of them being foreclosed on, of the shame, the stress, the upheaval. So I told Michael I'd talk to Dr. Montgomery at the hospital about picking up extra shifts. He hugged me tightly. You're the best mom. I promise we'll pay you back once we're stable again. I was 60, working 12-hour night shifts in cardiac care, skipping meals to save money, driving an old car that probably should have been replaced 3 years ago, putting off repairs on my own house, all while making their mortgage payment. For 3 years I did this. No complaints. Every month the transfer went through. Quiet, automatic. But something else happened during those years too. Something more painful than the dwindling bank balance. Michael and Jennifer drifted away. Sunday dinners turned into the occasional lunch. Phone calls were short, filled with updates about their lives, never questions about mine. Jennifer rarely made eye contact anymore. When I visited, she'd smile tightly, distracted by her phone or her plans. Their house had changed too. Lavish new decor, designer furniture. The new sectional is gorgeous, I commented once, running my hand along the velvet armrest. Jennifer didn't even look up. It's from that showroom downtown. We decided to splurge. Mental health is important, you know? Mental health. I bit my tongue thinking of my leaky bathroom faucet I couldn't afford to fix. That same evening, I overheard her on the phone with her mother, I know Mom. It's exhausting having to include her in everything, but Michael feels obligated. At least she helps out financially. Helps out. Like I was a roommate chipping in on utilities. Then came Thanksgiving. I'd had a cough for weeks, but pushed through work anyway. I didn't want to drop the ball, didn't want them to fall behind. But Dr. Montgomery caught me leaning against the nurse's station, struggling to catch my breath. That's it, he said. I'm ordering a chest x-ray. Pneumonia, complicated by exhaustion. My immune system was shot. You need rest, Barbara, he told me. I'm putting you on leave. 4 weeks minimum, I argued. Of course I did, but he wouldn't budge. So that night I lay in bed, feverish and aching. I picked up the phone and called their house. Jennifer answered. Hi, Jenny. Is Michael around? He's in a meeting. Can I take a message? I wanted to talk about the mortgage. I'm on medical leave for a few weeks. I won't be able to work the extra shifts. Silence. So? I was hoping you and Michael could handle the payment this month while I recover. More silence. Then she said flat. So you're saying you won't be sending the money? I can't, Jenny. I'm sick. We're counting on that money, Barbara. We have plans. We've already booked our ski trip to Vermont, a ski trip, while I couldn't afford to fix my faucet. I've been paying your mortgage for 3 years, I said softly. I think you and Michael can manage 1 month. She laughed. Right. Because that makes up for everything Michael did for you after his father died. What he told me, how you leaned on him emotionally, how he had to stay close for college because you couldn't handle being alone. You think that wasn't a burden? I was stunned. I worked double shifts to keep him in school, I whispered. I kept it together for his sake. Look, she said, we all know you're only paying the mortgage to stay involved in our lives. Don't use your health as leverage. In what universe was paying someone's mortgage considered a ploy to be included? I'll talk to Michael. I managed. Please have him call me. But he didn't. Not that night. Not the next. 3 days later, he finally called. Mom, he said. Already defensive, Jenny told me about your call. I'm sorry you're not feeling well, but we really need that payment. We're hosting a pre-Christmas dinner and already ordered new furniture. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Michael, I've paid your mortgage for 3 years. I'm sick. I just need a break. So, you're keeping track. I thought you were helping because you wanted to, not because you expected anything in return. All I expect is basic respect, I said, and maybe some concern for my health. It's just bad timing, he said. The holidays are coming. We have obligations. More important than your mother's health. He sighed. Let's not make this dramatic, Mom. Maybe we can send you half this month. Half. Don't bother. I said, a strange calm settling over me. I'll figure something out. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet house and stared at the ceiling. For the first time, I really saw things clearly. I had drained myself to keep them afloat, and the second I needed something in return, even basic empathy, it was too much. Something had to change, and this time it would start with me. The very next morning, despite still feeling weak from pneumonia, I made 2 important phone calls. The first was to my bank. I canceled the automatic mortgage transfer to Michael and Jennifer's account. The second was to Grace Thompson, an old friend and retired teacher, who had invited me more times than I could count to join her volunteer group at the community center. "Barbara Wilson," she said with cheerful surprise when she picked up. "To what do I owe this pleasure, I was wondering." I said, voice still scratchy, "If that offer to join your book club is still open." She laughed. "Always. We meet Thursdays at the library." "But aren't you usually working then?" "Not anymore," I said simply. "I'm making some changes." Over the next 2 weeks, while I recovered from pneumonia, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Texts, calls, more texts, all from Michael. "Mom did the payment bounce. Did you forget the transfer? Please respond. It's urgent." I didn't reply to any of them. For the first time in a long time, I focused on myself. I read books I'd been meaning to get to for years. I drank tea. I watched the birds in the backyard. I even called my sister Linda in Ohio, someone I hadn't spoken to in months because I was always too busy. We talked for over an hour, caught up like no time had passed. I hung up the phone with tears in my eyes, not from sadness, but from the joy of being remembered, of being connected without strings. The day before Thanksgiving, Michael finally appeared on my doorstep. He looked stressed. His shirt wrinkled, his hair unkempt in a way that reminded me of his teenage years. "Mom," he said the second I opened the door, "there's been some mistake with the mortgage. The bank says the transfer was canceled." "It wasn't a mistake," I said calmly. "I canceled it." He blinked. "What? Why would you do that? Because I'm no longer able to pay your mortgage. I'm focusing on my health and my future now." His face flushed red. "You can't just decide that without warning. We have commitments, dinner parties, events. Jenny's parents are counting on us. Like your ski trip." He looked down, ashamed for a moment, then angry again. "We work hard. We deserve a vacation. And I deserve to retire someday," I said quietly. "I deserve to live without constant exhaustion. I deserve to be respected by my son and daughter-in-law." He ran his hands through his hair, pacing my porch like a caged animal. "This isn't like you, Mom. You've always been there for me, and I always will be," I said, holding back tears, emotionally. "But financially, you and Jennifer need to take care of yourselves now." He stared at me for a long second, then turned on his heel. "Fine. We'll figure it out ourselves. But don't expect us to rearrange our lives to include you when you're being this selfish." That word selfish hung in the air long after he was gone. Thanksgiving came. I didn't spend it alone. Instead, I showed up quietly, nervously to the community center where Grace and her group were organizing a meal for seniors who had nowhere to go. She spotted me the second I walked in. "Barbara?" she exclaimed. "I didn't expect to see you today. I had a change of plans," I said simply. She didn't ask questions, just handed me an apron. "Well, we're glad you're here. The mashed potatoes need stirring." It was the most peaceful holiday I'd had in years. No passive-aggressive comments, no walking on eggshells, no feeling like I had to earn my seat at the table. Just laughter, connection, grateful people. The Monday after Thanksgiving, I made another important call this time to Martin Goldstein, the lawyer who had helped me with Robert's estate years ago. His office hadn't changed much. The scent of coffee, the walls lined with law books, the same steady presence that had carried me through the hardest days of my widowhood. "Barbara," he said, rising from his desk to greet me. "It's been a while. How can I help?" I told him everything. How I'd paid Michael and Jennifer's mortgage for 3 years. How I'd taken money from my retirement savings. How I'd been cut out of holidays, ignored when sick, and dismissed when I asked for one small reprieve. Martin listened intently, jotting down notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Let me get this straight. You've been making monthly payments directly to their lender, correct?" "Yes. But there's no formal agreement. Nothing in writing." "No. It was all verbal. Michael promised they'd pay me back once things settled. And how much have you paid total? I had done the math the night before. $126,000. He let out a long breath. That's a significant amount. I also co-signed a home equity line of credit for them last year. I added quietly, $50,000. Jennifer said they needed it for home improvements. Martin's expression shifted from concerned to alarmed. Barbara, if they default on that loan, the lender can pursue you. My stomach twisted. What can I do? First, document everything, every transfer, every text or email that mentions repayment. You probably won't be able to sue for repayment without a formal contract, but you need to protect yourself, especially if they try to claim you promised to pay. I nodded. And check that home equity account immediately, he said. See what's left. If they've drawn on it, you may want to pay it off. Yes, it's painful, but it may be the only way to protect your credit. I left his office feeling equal parts angry and clear-headed. It was time to stop pretending that everything was okay. That night, I called the bank. After verifying my identity, the woman on the line pulled up the account. The current balance is $48 $620, she said, turning the screen slightly. The last withdrawal was $12,000 on November 15th, right before Thanksgiving. Right before they told me not to come for Christmas. I'd like to pay it off and close the account, I said. She raised her eyebrows. That's the entire balance. I understand. I'll be withdrawing from my retirement. It took nearly 2 hours to finalize the payment and close the account. The penalties for early withdrawal were steep, but Martin was right. Remaining financially entangled with Michael and Jennifer would be far more costly in the long run. When I got home, there were 3 missed calls from Michael. 1 text, need to discuss mortgage ASAP. Call me. I set my phone down. Not yet. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and a notepad taking stock of what was left. After paying off the home equity line, I had around $20,000 left in accessible savings. It might last me a year, maybe less, if I stopped working entirely. My pension would kick in when I turned 65, but until then the math was tight. The house I still owned outright, thank God for that. Robert and I had worked hard to pay it off. I always thought I'd leave it to Michael someday. But now I was thinking about whether I might need to sell it to stay afloat. I'd always imagined my future as the supportive mother, maybe the doting grandmother, always part of the family, always needed. But that dream had already crumbled, and I couldn't afford to keep pretending. The next day, Michael called again. I answered this time. "Mom, finally," he said. "Not hello. Not how are you? I had appointments," I replied calmly. "Okay, well, we need to talk. The mortgage payment was due yesterday. The bank says they didn't receive anything. Are you still planning to send it or not?" "No," I said. "As I told you last week, I'm focusing on my own financial security now." There was a pause. Then his voice shifted to that tone I remembered from his teenage years when he was asking for a late-night ride or for me to just sign this permission slip real quick. "Mom, come on. I know you're upset about Christmas, but that's Jenny's family's tradition. We're not trying to exclude you. It's just formal, different." I let out a quiet breath. "Michael, your wife told me I didn't fit in. She said it would be better if I just didn't come. She didn't mean it like that. She meant it exactly like that," I said, cutting him off gently. "You know, when I worked double shifts to keep you in college, I never thought I'd be considered too low class for your holiday dinner table." His silence said everything. "Michael," I continued, "I love you. I always will. But this arrangement we've had, it's unhealthy. It's not helping you, and it's destroying me." There was a long, awkward pause. And then, "So that's it. You're just cutting us off." "I'm setting boundaries," I said simply. "I'm prioritizing my needs, something I should have done years ago." He scoffed. "Well, I hope your boundaries keep you warm when you're alone on Christmas." And with that, he hung up. A few hours later, I got a text from Jennifer. "Michael told me what you did. Paying off the HELOC without discussing it first was manipulative and controlling. We had plans for that money. This is exactly why we need space from you." I stared at the screen, stunned. Manipulative, I had paid off a loan to protect myself from their debt, and now apparently I was the villain in their story. I didn't reply. Instead, I called the hospital. Dr. Montgomery's assistant answered. Dr. Montgomery's office. Hi, it's Barbara Wilson. Could I speak with him when he has a moment? Absolutely. He's been asking how you're doing. Later that day, I sat in his office. You're looking better, he said, studying me carefully, but not fully recovered. Are you sure you're ready to come back? Not to my old shifts, I admitted. I was hoping we could talk about part-time options. Administrative work, maybe? He nodded slowly. We could place you in the outpatient coordination unit. 3 days a week, regular hours. Pays lower, but that sounds perfect. He smiled. You know, Barbara, I've been concerned for a while. You've always worked like you're carrying the whole world on your shoulders, but you've seemed lighter lately. Even now. I nodded. I've had a wake-up call, and I'm making changes. I'm glad, he said, standing. One more thing, we're hosting the hospital Christmas party on the 23rd. I hope you'll come this year. You're not working that night for once. I smiled. I think I'd like that. The next 2 weeks passed in a kind of quiet transition. I started my new schedule 3 days a week in administration. It wasn't exciting, but it gave me structure. Peace. I went to Grace's book club for the first time. I even helped at the community center's clothing drive on a Saturday. Michael called a few more times. Each conversation was more tense than the last. The reality of their finances was sinking in, and neither he nor Jennifer seemed prepared to scale back. During our last call, he said bitterly, we might have to sell the house. That might be the smartest option, I replied calmly. Find something that actually fits your budget. This is our home, he snapped. What will Jenny's parents think? I bit back the urge to say what I was thinking, that keeping up appearances had helped dig this hole in the first place. Michael, I said there are worse things than downsizing. Trust me. He hung up with a huff. Days went by. Then a week. No calls, no texts. It was quiet, peaceful. Then the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Thomas Parker, Jennifer's father. He stood on my porch wearing an expensive coat leather gloves and a sour expression. Mrs. Wilson, he said stiffly, may I come in? We need to talk. I stepped aside to let him in, my heart pounding a little harder than I wanted to admit. Thomas Parker had barely spoken more than a few polite words to me in the years since Michael and Jennifer's wedding. He was always courteous, sure, but never warm, never interested. Now he was in my living room eyeing the modest furniture, like it was part of an exhibit on middle-class living. Can I get you some tea or coffee? I offered, falling back on hospitality instinct. No, thank you. This won't take long. He remained standing, his posture stiff, his tone businesslike. I understand, he began, that you've chosen to discontinue your financial support of Michael and Jennifer. There it was. I clasped my hands in my lap and looked up at him. That's correct. I'm focusing on my own financial stability now. His jaw tightened. Be that as it may, your decision has created significant hardship. The timing is particularly unfortunate. With the holidays approaching, they've made commitments, social obligations that now cannot be met. I waited. I knew where this was going. I could feel it. He continued. Jennifer is quite distressed. She tells me you not only ceased mortgage support, but also closed the home equity line of credit, one which they had planned to use for seasonal expenses. That line of credit was in my name, I said evenly. As a co-signer, I had legal and financial responsibility. I protected myself. Yes, legally, I'm sure you were within your rights, he said, waving it off. But the suddenness of it, the abrupt nature, has put them in a very difficult position. Still, I waited, and then he got to it. I'd like to propose a temporary arrangement, he said, drawing a checkbook from his coat pocket. If you're willing to resume the mortgage payments just until after the new year, I'm prepared to compensate you. He uncapped a pen. A consulting fee, he added, as if that made the entire conversation more palatable. Simple business. You transfer the payments for another 2 months they get through the holidays, and I make it worth your while. I stared at him. This man, who had never invited me into his home, who had let his daughter treat me like a nuisance, who had judged me without ever knowing me, was standing in my living room offering to pay me to continue enabling my son's irresponsibility. To be clear, I said you want to pay me to keep paying their bills. He didn't flinch. It's a short-term solution. Everyone benefits. No, I said, not everyone. Certainly not me. Think of the alternative, he said, stepping a little closer. They default. There's a foreclosure. Michael's career suffers. Jennifer's reputation takes a hit. My family name is dragged into public embarrassment. Ah, there it was. Not concern for their well-being, concern for appearances. Mr. Parker, I said quietly, if you're truly worried about their finances, perhaps you should help them directly. He blinked as though the concept had never occurred to him. That's not how we do things in our family, he said. We believe in financial independence. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Financial independence, funded by a 62-year-old nurse working overtime, I asked. You call that independence. His mouth twisted. Jennifer was right about you. This attitude, this resentment, it's precisely why we felt it would be awkward for you to join us for Christmas. So now we're being honest, I said. Frankly, he added, many parents would be grateful their child married into a family of our standing, and many families would treat their in-laws with basic courtesy and respect, I replied. Silence. Then tightly he tucked his checkbook back into his coat. I see this conversation has no productive future. I'll inform them they'll need to make other arrangements. That would be best, I said. As he walked to the door, he turned back. Merry Christmas, Mrs. Wilson. Merry Christmas, Mr. Parker, I replied. I closed the door softly behind him, but my heart was racing like I'd just run a mile. I leaned against it for a moment, letting the adrenaline drain out of me. Not angry, not shaken, not anymore, just tired, but also firm. Resolved. Because for the first time in a long time, I had drawn a line. And this time, I wasn't stepping back. The next day, my calendar caught my eye. I had circled December 25th in red back in October, back when I still believed I'd be sitting at my son's holiday table watching grandkids tear into presents, maybe carving a turkey, while Jennifer sipped champagne and criticized the gravy. I stared at that red circle for a long time. Then I picked up a pen and crossed it out. In its place, I wrote dinner at Grace's. 2 p.m., not the Christmas I expected, but maybe the one I needed. I was still sitting with my tea the next morning watching the frost melt off the windows when the phone rang. The caller ID showed Michael. I stared at it for a long second. Then I answered. Mom, he said. No greeting, just urgency. Did you really refuse Thomas's offer? So Mr. Parker wasted no time. Yes, I said. Why, he snapped. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was for us? I was quiet for a moment. Then I asked, Michael, do you hear yourself? He came here to buy my cooperation, to pay me to keep funding your lifestyle. And you're humiliated. He was trying to help. No, I said softly. He was trying to make a problem go away. Michael's voice grew louder. Do you even care what this is doing to Jennifer? To me, we've had to cancel parties, avoid our friends. We're stretched thin, Mom, I've noticed. You don't understand this isn't just about money anymore. I stayed quiet. He continued, this is about you deliberately making things worse. You could have just waited until after the holidays, given us time. Instead, you pulled the rug out from under us. And then without missing a beat, he added, you've always done this. Controlled things, made everything about you. I should have seen it earlier. I froze. That was when I knew. It was never just about the money. This had become about narrative, about rewriting history. "Michael," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "do you remember who helped you apply for college, who drove you to your job interviews, who stayed up with you when your asthma kept you coughing all night?" Silence. I was the one working double shifts to keep food on the table and tuition paid. I didn't ask for credit. I didn't expect parades. But I did hope someday for basic appreciation, respect. Instead, I'm being painted as manipulative. "You're twisting it," he said. "No," I replied. "I'm finally seeing it clearly." Then came his final blow. "You know what, fine. Keep your money. Stay home for Christmas. Alone. I hope it's worth it." And just like that, he hung up. I stared at my phone, then set it down. Calm. Sad, but calm. I called Grace. "Is that dinner invitation still open?" I asked. "Of course it is," she said warmly. "You bring the cookies, I'll bring the wine." Then I called Dr. Montgomery's office to confirm I'd attend the hospital Christmas party on the 23rd. His secretary sounded delighted. And finally, I picked up the phone and dialed my sister Linda in Ohio. "Barbara," she said, surprised but happy. What a nice surprise. We talked for an hour. I didn't tell her everything, but I told her enough. "I always thought we'd be closer when we were older," she said. "Funny how life has a way of pulling people apart." "It's not too late," I said. "No, it's not," she agreed. "You know what, I was thinking of visiting Aunt Martha in Pittsburgh after New Year's. Maybe I'll swing by Oak Ridge for a few days." "I'd love that," I said sincerely, and I meant it. Something was changing in me. I wasn't waking up dreading the day. I wasn't scanning my phone waiting for the next financial emergency. I was reclaiming space, emotional space, physical space, time, for myself. It wasn't the life I imagined, but maybe it was the one I needed. The hospital's Christmas party was far nicer than I expected. They'd transformed the conference room into a glowing winter scene, blue and silver ornaments, evergreen centerpieces. A string quartet played softly in the corner. I wore a simple navy dress and a silver scarf, not because I had to, but because I wanted to feel good. And when Dr. Montgomery Richards saw me, he smiled like I was the only person in the room. "Barbara," he said, "you look lovely." "Thank you, Richard. You clean up well yourself." He offered me his arm. "Shall we?" We made the rounds. I met board members, staff from other wings, even a few younger nurses who had heard of Barbara Wilson as a legend from the cardiac floor. It felt surreal and wonderful. Later after dinner, Richard leaned in. "You seem different tonight." "Do I more present?" he said. "You're not scanning the exits, not checking your watch." I laughed. "That's because I'm not waiting for the next crisis." He nodded. "It suits you." At the end of the evening, as we stood near the door picking up our gifts, a spa voucher and a leather-bound journal with my initials, he said, "Would you join me next weekend? There's a chamber music concert at the university." My breath caught slightly. "Is that a date?" He smiled. "I believe it is." "Then I believe I'll say yes." Christmas Day came, and for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't up at dawn prepping food for a crowd. I didn't have a turkey to baste or table settings to fuss over, or the pressure of making everything perfect for someone else. Instead, I woke up slowly, warm under the blankets. The sky outside was still tinted with morning blue. Snow had fallen lightly overnight, covering the street in soft white silence. I brewed a pot of coffee, opened the curtains, pulled out the leather journal the hospital had gifted me, and began writing on the first page. This Christmas, I chose peace. Then I got dressed, nothing fancy, just something warm and cheerful, and headed over to Grace's house carrying a plate of homemade oatmeal cookies. Her home was bustling. Not loud, not chaotic, just full. The kind of full that made your shoulders drop and your chest relax. There were neighbors I'd seen in passing, a few retired teachers from the district, a couple who had just moved to Oak Ridge from Boston. Everyone brought something: cranberry relish, roasted vegetables, bottles of wine, laughter, and no one asked, Why are you here instead of with family? Instead, we just were together. I didn't look at my phone all afternoon, didn't need to. After dinner, Grace put on some old Ella Fitzgerald Christmas records and passed around a tin of peppermint bark. I sat on the couch beside her as she looked around the room. "Barbara," she said, "next year I'm putting you in charge of the stuffing. Yours blew mine out of the water." I laughed. "Careful, or I'll take over your whole kitchen." She grinned. "Please do." Later that night, walking home through gently falling snow, I felt something strange and unfamiliar in my chest. Not regret, not resentment. Relief. 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail from a lawyer's office. At first I panicked. Did Michael and Jennifer... No, it wasn't a lawsuit, it was a notification. Michael and Jennifer Parker had defaulted on their mortgage. The property was entering pre-foreclosure. The bank had initiated proceedings. The document was addressed to me as a former co-signer on the home equity line, now paid off, thankfully. But I still received the courtesy notice due to past involvement. For a brief moment, I stared at the paper, heart pounding. Then, I folded it and placed it in a drawer. It wasn't my crisis to solve anymore. The first week of January, I got another call from Linda. "I'm coming out the weekend of the 13th, she said. "Got a good rate on the train. You free, absolutely." "By the way," she added, "I told Aunt Martha you're doing better." She got all misty-eyed and said she always knew you were the strong one. That made me laugh. "I think she got us mixed up," I said. "Nope," Linda replied. "I think you're finally becoming who you always were before life demanded so much of you." That weekend, I met Richard at the university concert hall. He was wearing a navy coat and a scarf the color of red wine. He handed me a single white rose. "It's January," I said, smiling. "They sell them year-round," he replied. "Just takes a little effort." We sat through an hour of strings and woodwinds followed by coffee at a quiet cafe. He asked me what I planned to do now with work slowing down with fewer obligations. I thought about it. "I might travel," I said. "Not far? Maybe just to the coast? See the water again?" "You ever been to Charleston?" he asked. "Once," I said, "but it rained the whole time." "Then we should go when it doesn't." I looked at him. Steady, kind, patient. And I realized this new chapter of mine might have room for something more than just healing, maybe even joy. As for Michael, a few weeks later, I got a brief email. Subject update message. "We're selling the house. Found a smaller place outside the city. It's been hard. I'm sorry for how things went. Hope you're okay. Michael." That was it. No grand apology, no sweeping confession. But it was something. A crack in the wall. I stared at the screen for a long time, then hit reply. Subject re-update message. "Thank you for letting me know. I'm glad you're finding your way forward. I wish you and Jennifer the best. Mom and I meant it because this wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving a point. It was about breaking a pattern that had gone on too long. Epilogue for anyone who's been forgotten." If you're watching this right now and you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've poured your love, your time, your savings, your soul into the people you care about, only to be dismissed or taken for granted, I want you to hear this. You are not crazy. You are not selfish. And you are not wrong for finally choosing yourself. Boundaries aren't walls. They're doors with locks. You decide who gets the key. And sometimes the hardest thing in the world is to stop knocking on doors that no longer open. This story isn't about bitterness. It's about clarity, about reclaiming your peace, and realizing that sometimes the family you build around you, friends, neighbors, even strangers, can love you better than the family you were born into. So here's to new chapters, to quieter mornings, to dinners where you're wanted, not just tolerated, to choosing peace over performance, and most of all, to remembering that you too deserve to be chosen. If this story touched you, share it. Someone out there needs to hear it today. See you in the next one.